Hello, everybody, once again, and welcome to another fantasy baseball edition of the Turnbuckle Sports Network podcast. We are your hosts, Matt Hewitt and Steve Mutzu. Steve, what is happening, my man?
Not a lot. How about you?
It's going good. And so we decided to do this video today, and it was actually by recommendation from a buddy of ours on imaginesports.com. that we've played some fantasy baseball with, who liked our first tutorial on creating an offense. So our buddy Brian Ehrlich, who goes by the username of Deadpool on imaginesports.com, suggested we do a video on how Steve would create his basically his rotation, his starting pitching and his bullpen. So thanks a lot for the I guess the request for this, Brian. So here's a shout out for you. Maybe we'll play in a league again here sometime down the road. And so we're going to do this video by his request today. And of course, if you want to join us in playing some fantasy baseball with us, visit the link on the screen, imaginesports.com/bball. That'll take you to the Diamond Mind online site where you can create an account and get in a league with us and play. So Steve, we're going to talk about creating your whole rotation. And so let's go ahead and get started with that.
All right. The first thing you're going to want to do is set your search criteria to something like this.
And what page are we doing this in, Steve?
In the cash worksheet. Well, this actually is just the beginning, the draft page. You just click a starting pitcher and you come right here to the cash worksheet. And once you get here, you'll just want to have all 10 of these filled up. Your search criteria, opponent's average, opponent's on base percentage, opponent's slugging, hold. Now this one here, I use this thing. Hold's not really that important, but I like to keep this one to where I can move it around and use whatever I'm really looking for. Maybe I'm looking for hits per 9 or something. This is starting pitching durability. Now the whole durability thing, it's excellent here. The whole durability thing, excellent, very good, average, fair, and poor. An excellent starting pitcher can throw about 130 pitches per game, depending upon era of play you're in. Could be more, could be a little less. A very good guy, maybe 120, 110, 190, something like that. It's going to be something like that, depending upon the era. It's not just the game. It's not just 125 a game. It's also per 5-game window. The 5-game window is right here. In this 5-game window, you can throw an excellent starting pitcher, for instance, can throw about 250 pitches. So Rich Gale here, this would have been the game he would have pitched on. You'd see him right here, 4 games out. That's the most you can do. If this 113 was over here, he would only be able to throw about 113 more pitches. He couldn't do the same amount or he'd get fatigued. Fatigue sets in around 125 pitches per game or 250 pitches per week. So that's how you deal with durability. These are splits. These are super important. You can just go with OPS for ease, but you might want to look closer at, average, slugging, whatever, stuff like that.
I would, if I could interject for a second, even just for a starting out noob on the game, like when I first started, I at the very least did OPS versus right and OPS versus left. I mean, bare minimum, you would have to search for that on there for sure.
And you're probably going to want whip. If it's an injury league, you're definitely going to want this. I mean, a fragile guy will get hurt a lot, and an iron guy won't get hurt at all. He might miss a game. A fragile guy might miss 40. And this here is important right here. I always have innings pitched in a single season league. You don't need this in a standard league because that kind of stuff doesn't matter in that. But in a single season league, this matters. You need at least 10 innings pitched to have your coding exactly like your stats say. If you have 8 innings pitched, you'll get 2 league average innings added onto it. So you need 10. I don't want nobody that don't have at least 10 innings pitched. So you just basically, okay, what was you going to say, man?
Yeah, I was going to say that would come into play where the sim stats aren't exactly accurate. So that is a huge tip for people on here you have to have at least 10 innings pitched for it to code right on the game. That's a huge tip coming into this, especially if you're a beginner.
And in batters, it's 20 plate appearances.
10 innings pitched for pitchers, 20 plate appearances for batters. Key tip right there.
All right, and so basically you just pick a guy in your price range that you like, that, you know, does the stuff you like. You probably, if it's your ace and it's an injury league, you probably don't want prone for your ace. You want him out there every fourth day. Boom, 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 throwing 100 and something pitches. That's the guy that gives your bullpen a rest. So let's just do what traditionally people do and pick a iron EX guy. Let's go for Pat Hinkin. He's a relatively new guy. Now, the next pitcher, you don't want him to cost so much. Basically, the way I do it, I would never spend $9 million on my whole team, really, but
$9 million on your whole staff?
The whole staff. But
Yeah.
That's just me. Most people spend 30%, 50% of their whole salary cap on pitching. I just don't happen to do that.
And that's another thing, too. It's all about personal preference and stuff like that. Steve's just shown you the way that he has been wildly successful in managing teams for quite some time on here. Some people might want to focus on pitching dollars, getting a really solid, expensive staff that looks good on paper, and then maybe they're not as focused on offense. Steve's experience here is what he's showing you is that he's not going to spend that much on his rotation, historically.
For our number 2 pitcher, let's take another Pat. We're going to pick Pats today. So, all right, let's go back in here. Let's see here. If you want a 5th starter, just go super cheap and hit that 5th starter option, because you don't want him pitching as much as the rest of the guys. You want to hit if you're going to have a 5-man rotation, which I do not recommend. I recommend a 4-man rotation with an ace. But if you're going to go with a 5, don't spend any money on that 5th starting pitcher, even if you've spent a lot on the rest of them, because he's only going to start twice a week, whereas your ace will start 5 times. So it just isn't worth it. So let's grab another pitcher. Since we're going to go with Pats, I did it wrong. Sorry, guys. That is one of my biggest things I do constantly. Put the first name in the last name almost every time. I don't know why I do that.
I'm a victim of that.
I forgot to show you guys the number 1 tip to pitching is pitching any pitcher. None of this matters. This don't really matter. Here's what you do. Done. Right there. That's how you do it.
Of course, the trademark of the Lime Ripper himself, only using right-handers in his pitching rotation and offensively as well. He is the right-hand man, the right-hand king for sure. Oh, boy.
All right, I've got 4 starting pitchers in here. This is way more than I would spend, but these guys can handle it. They've got enough innings to get through the season. So let's start looking at relief pitchers. Relief pitchers are a lot harder to pick because the starting pitcher, you just want a guy that can get out lefties and rightings, give you some innings, doesn't give up too many hits, doesn't give up too many walks or homers. It's basically a pitcher. But now that you're looking for specialists in the bullpen, you really want to pay attention to splits here. So this is the way you would sort it. Oh, man. Pick somebody that's got some innings in there against left. This is just, I didn't really think about that, but let's take this guy here, Jerry Hanna. Basically, you just do that. OPS versus right, OPS versus left. Pick you some guys that can get the other hand out. The first, 2 or 3 of them on each side. A long man. The long man, I like the long man. If all my starters are right-handed, my long man is left-handed. You want to do that, switch it out. Then I want my closer to be, okay, if all my pitchers are right-handed, and I'm not just going all right-handed, I will go right-handed, a lot of left-handed in the middle of reliever, and then back to right-handed with the closer, so that when they're doing their platoons, when my closer comes in, they're probably facing the wrong hand. You understand what I'm saying?
What would you set their pull at ratios? Like for instance, I definitely don't do all right-handers or left-handers. I just go off of players, the best guys I can find, best pitchers I can afford. But it's kind of standard way of doing it. What I like to do, so I'd like to get your take on this real quick while we're talking about it, is I like specialists. I like left-handed specialists and I like right-handed specialists. I'm looking at splits all the time while I'm doing my draft. However, if I see a guy who has an OPS or OPS versus right of 300 and OPS versus left of 700, I am going to throw that guy versus right only. What would you set his pull at ratio on the player settings tab in here?
So if a guy has extreme splits, the example you gave, 300, 700 is not that bad,
Mm-hmm.
But if it's even 600, 900, I want to put a pull at 1 on that guy. I want him out of there. If a right-hander comes in, goodbye, get out. That's why I go with a big That's why I go with a big bullpen, because I set a lot of my pitchers to 1 for almost all of my setup guys. I want them out of there.
That's why I brought that up, Steve, is because that's what I've been doing and finding success with. Because a lot of times you'll be searching for a pitcher on here, and once you go through a draft and a season starts going, pitching often becomes somewhat limited because everybody's been drafted already. And so you're going to find guys on there with, 15, 20, 30, 40 innings and say those guys are only effective against or the most effective against right-handers. You're going to want to go into your player instructions tab, set those guys to pull that 1. So if they're coming in for an inning and the first batter is a right-hander, which they're great at, they're going to get that guy out. Then if a left-hander comes up again, you've got a lefty ready to come in to relieve him, and the sim manager ought to throw that guy automatically in for you.
And especially if you're playing live, like me and you have played live a few times, that big bullpen with those specialists is great because you can make all the right moves.
Playing live is a lot of fun too. So if you have some friends that are in your league with you and you guys are going up against each other on the schedule, you guys can get together and play the game live, and you actually can manage the game as the game goes along. You can throw in relievers when you want, pinch hitters when you want. And if you don't do that, obviously the sim manager does it for you anyway. But with those settings on there as well that I brought up, if you got to pull at 1 or 2 or whatever you prefer, it'll automatically do it for you. But playing it live is definitely a lot of fun. Me and Steve like to do that a lot.
Yep. Now I've got this page. When I first pulled up this page, it was set at just 10 innings. So there was some guys with some crazy stats. I didn't know what to say. Now it looks a little more normal, like Billy Pierce looks like a pretty good player. He's got 49 innings, which, here's another tip. This 49 innings is actually 55 innings. They give you 10%. So remember that. You get a few extra innings. You always get 10% more.
Oh, wow. You know what? That is something I forgot until now. Wow, that's a great tip too.
50 innings for a left-handed specialist probably won't get you through the full season, but maybe. Depends how often you use him. And this guy would be a pretty good choice. He's not too expensive. I mean, that's pretty nice. That's a little bad, but hey, he's cheap. 2 million. Yeah, let's take him. Let's look for a right-hander. So I raised this to 40 so that we can get some players that aren't 0 or whatever. You know what I mean? You saw those guys.
Yeah. And you see what Steve did there. Once he entered the search, he actually went and clicked on the OPS versus right tab, and that's how
I was looking at it wrong last time. When I picked Billy Pierce, I thought I was looking at left-handers, and I chose him to be my left-handed specialist. But hey, that was a mistake. Let's just leave him alone. Let's pick a left-hander.
Yeah,
that guy's a reverse split. That we talked about that last video. The reverse. This guy's really good. Because they'll bring in right-handers to face him, and he'll own right-handers. Like the computer will be like, "There's a left-hander, let's bring in a right-hander," and then he'll murder him. So that's one of the reasons why I like to do that. So we need a right-handed specialist now, or somebody that he could be as long as he gets left-handers out. I mean, this is a really good player. The league we're in right now has no injuries. So if you see fragile in a no injury league, you don't have to pay for if he was iron, he'd cost more. If he was even normal, he'd cost more. prone, he would cost more. But since he's fragile, he costs the least. You pay the least for injury with that guy. So that's a good guy to pick. Plus his stats look nice. Not too bad here, but really good here. Let's take him. 59 innings might get you through the whole year. What's that? 66 innings?
66 innings is solid for a reliever. You'll be able to get a lot of good usage out of him, especially with the settings that we said earlier. You could theoretically look at it as 66 appearances almost. Depends on how many batters he faces or how long you keep him in for.
And then you just pick, 6 guys like that, 5 guys like that, and then you want a closer. Now, with your closer, you don't want him just set 9th inning only, and you want that. I set my closer sometimes even in long relief. Sometimes I set him in every role. When the game is on the line, that's the guy I want to pitch. That is the man that I want in the game. I want him to have great splits on both sides. That's fine. Well, there's Billy Wagner, but this is kind of high. I would prefer it to be lower. Here you go. Look at this. We got enough innings. Will Smith here is looking good. But he's the wrong hand. And I don't just mean because he's left-handed and I like right-handed. He's actually the wrong hand because all my starting pitchers are right-handed. They're all named Pat too, but they're also all right-handed. So I want a right-handed closer because I want my middle reliever left-handed. So I mean, Will Smith looks good, but he's wrong hand. I want the computer manager to make mistakes. Here you go. Turk Farrell. He's got a cool name. Let's take him. And, if you had a couple more of these guys, you'd have basically a full pitching staff. You set your starting pitchers. I set my starting pitchers to get pulled at 1, too. See, this is the reason I do that. I go with a 4-man rotation, and I don't ever want nobody pitching long into a game till they're tired. If it was up to me and my guy was throwing a no-hitter and he got tired, adios, dude. Let's go. I want to win. I don't care about you and your no-hitter. You're not even real. So I set it at 1 all the time. Almost always. For almost all pitchers, 1. Just get them out of there. When the going gets tough, see you later. I got 12 more of you guys.
Is there anything else you can add to the rotation? Because this is a lot of great info here. I might actually start putting my starting pitchers to pull at 1 because I have a couple of guys on my team right now that go deep into games, and they tend to do that often. And the more that they do that, they're going to burn up their innings, and they have potential to get fatigued, and that might burn me late in the season, and that might bring on the old proverbial pumpkin. The pumpkin. And so if you don't know what we're talking about there, stay tuned for some future videos. I think we'll probably feature one just on pumpkining, which is a huge deal late in the season in any league.
As far as the pumpkin thing goes, I do have one thing to say about that. Another reason why you set it at 1, you only have so many innings with these pitchers. You don't want to waste them when they're tired. You want them pitching at the best of their ability against the best matchup every time. You don't want them tired. You don't want it to be the end of the year and be a staff full of pumpkins. You need to spread that out, spread out the workload, make it to the end without a red bar over your name.
And what we mean by pumpkin is that your pitchers will only have X amount of innings per year. If you go over those innings, they turn into a pumpkin.
Sort of like Cinderella. Cinderella stayed out too late. And midnight hit, pumpkin.
Turned into a pumpkin. And once they turn into a pumpkin, kaput goes their abilities. And they just basically become terrible, no matter who they are. And you don't want that to happen.
But all right, what? Also, the whole really moving a guy at 1, that's like generally what I do. But if I had like Bob Gibson from 1968, who had gazillion 300 innings, I'm going to have a hard time using 300 innings. I need that guy to stay. If I want to get full value from a guy like that, then I have to leave him in because otherwise I'm going to be paying for innings that I won't use.
That would definitely be an exception.
I don't want to do that.
That's why it's important to look at innings, look at usage, and everything Steve showed us today.
Also,
for sure.
when you see these guys with 300 innings, it's hard to use it. I don't even like to buy those guys because I can't use all the innings. I don't want to pay for an inning that I'm not going to use. It's hard to use those innings, especially if you're, want your closer pitching at the end. You don't want complete games. I don't want complete games. I don't like to see complete games. That means I might have a guy pitching tired. I don't want to see somebody going for a shutout. I don't like any of that.
Well, excellent. Well, that was a lot of awesome information, Steve. I think that was a great guide to, basically starting the best starting pitching staff that you have, and your take on it is awesome as well. So once again, we want to thank our buddy Brian Ehrlich for suggesting us to do this video. Hope to see you in a league here pretty soon, Deadpool. And obviously, we got a lot more stuff to come. We've got some interviews lined up for some celebrity guests that are going to come on the podcast and talk some fantasy baseball with us, talk wrestling with us, MMA. So that's something to look forward to too. And obviously, please do visit our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. We're only about a day or two old now, but we've gained 10 subscribers in the last day. So I'm happy with that. So, if a lot more of you guys would do that, that'd be great. Just check us out at Turnbuckle Sports Network. You can find us everywhere. We actually do have a Facebook and Twitter account. Hit us up there as well. We're in the very early construction stages of those pages as well, where we're going to start to add a lot of content on there. So that is building a rotation on imaginesports.com and fantasy baseball. And this is Matt Hewitt and Steve Mutzu saying adios.